Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
The theater-going experience since COVID-19 has dramatically shifted to a whole new medium. While the world was crippled with the unprecedented lockdowns, the Hollywood machine scrambled to reorganize to avoid crippling financial ruin. Streaming, which was already in place, would help fill the void of the theater closures.
While the damage from streaming definitely noticeably started before COVID sped it up immensely.
Streaming services tested various strategies, including the choice to delay release dates or release straight to streaming. Another avenue that was explored by the film distributors was to release films simultaneously in theaters and streaming services on the same day.
Because before COVID, you didn't have blockbusters going to streaming. But then once COVID hit, stuff like Wonder Woman 84, Tenet, those movies that would have been, top grossing movies in a single year started to drop on streaming. COVID is also when every studio kind of start to push their own streaming service. That's when Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, Peacock, all of that. Once every major studio has their own streaming service, that was kind of, I don't want to say the nail in the coffin, but that was definitely a bad sign.
In some ways, streaming has hurt more traditional movie theaters, I would say, where the release windows have been shortened, which has been tough, and it definitely was tough for us. We used to show movies every single day that we didn't have live events. We don't do that anymore. But when we do show movies, it's more one-off screenings. It'll be maybe a classic movie paired with some kind of additional element. Sometimes it's just as simple as a specialty donut maker will come, or we'll have a beer tasting, or it'll be $1 movie. But there's some kind of other hook.
Technology changed not only how we consume, but also what we consumed, and the disruption is thus best described as technocultural. Families were beginning to adjust to the new normal of digital consumption. They enjoyed not only the convenience, but the safety of being in their own home.
Where I do think it's hurt us and theaters in general is with kids' movies and family movies. And this is where I think streaming also has the biggest impact, because if you want to take a family of 5 to go see the new Trolls movie or whatever, you're talking $60, $70 on tickets, plus every kid's gonna want a popcorn and a candy and all that, and it's $100+ to go see a movie. Or you can wait 2 months, rent it on demand, or buy it on Blu-ray for $20, and you just saved yourself $100. So I think that's the biggest issue is for the kids' movies, essentially.
With all of its advantages, streaming cannot compete with the social and emotional need for human interaction, and also the drive to experience new environments that the movie theater can provide.
Yep, and there's just something different about sitting in a movie theater with 800 other people. There's very few places in the world that you can do that anymore. And we have that right here on the North Shore. And it's a great experience. We do the Polar Express every year. This year we were able to bring it back, and it sells out every single year. We have a holiday fair for kids. We have the author of the Polar Express who lives in Beverly. He comes and he signs books for the kids. And then you got 800 kids sitting in their pajamas all together watching a movie right before Christmas. It's like the most magical thing in the world. It's really cool.
The communal aspect of movies is the one thing that can't really be replicated at home, regardless of how nice of a home theater setup or whatever you have. Avengers Endgame is a great example, because movies like that, you feel the energy when you're watching it. And not all movies benefit from the communal experience. I think specifically movies like big blockbuster superhero movies, comedies. Laughter is infectious. I think one of the reasons why the first huge movie post-pandemic was Top Gun Maverick was because of the communal experience. Everyone in the theater, gasping together, cheering. Can't be replicated at home. One of the biggest things we discussed before we started doing any sort of renovations and stuff was how do we give the space character? Because having character also makes it more memorable. And that's a way we can compete with the bigger theaters, is to have more character, be more memorable, be a more welcoming environment than your generic 20-screen multiplex.
The wonderful advantage that we have is that we're a historic theater. And the experience of the historic theater, when they were built, was supposed to be just as powerful as what you were seeing on the screens. Now, movie theaters today are not built that way. They're, when you walk into them, often they're in malls that are falling apart, and they've got some comfortable seats and things like that. But the theater itself is not a beautiful spectacle to behold. Now, we do have that in the cabin.
Because of the stranglehold that streaming has, and it's not going away, movie theaters can't just show movies anymore. And one of the ways we get around that is doing special events. And then there's also just general live events. In one of our auditoriums, we have a stage with a full PA system.
Nostalgia alone can't do it, but nostalgia is very, very powerful. We're bringing in Bruce Campbell to host 2 screenings of his classic movies. One is Army of Darkness and one is Evil Dead. On Sunday, we're going to have 1,700 patrons going through the Cabot Theater. For us, what's worked really, really well is that, the Cabot is a performance venue. People know it as a performance venue, and it's been both through its entire history. It's been silent movies, it's been vaudeville, it's been a magic show. It's always had both. So the more that we can integrate those two things, live performance and film together, that is where we've had the most success with audience building. I think it goes back to my feelings on streaming generally, where I do believe that I think there's room for both. And, if you look at the history of the movie industry, it's been long predicted that theaters would go out of business and some new technology would knock them out. And the people in this business really love it, and they get really creative, and they've always found a way to survive despite all of these things. And so I kind of just see it as another thing. And there's a segment of the population that maybe they're permanently on their couch right now. But there's a whole bunch of people that now go more than they ever did because they have an appreciation for when we didn't have it and what was missing. And then they go out, and I think it's, back to your point about the community and the communal experience. As human beings, we need that. And movie theaters are a great place to share that experience. And so I think the future is bright for theaters, but we can't keep doing things the same way. We're going to have to be creative, and we have to focus on our community and our customers. And I think those who do that will continue to be successful.
Back in 2012 was when the kind of mass switch to digital happened. It was when all the studios, distributors kind of collectively came together and were like, we're not going to make films anymore. We're not going to release movies on 35mm film anymore. And that forced movie theaters to either upgrade to digital or shut down. There was no other option. And the transition from the cost transition of digital projection was not cheap, to $60,000 to $100,000 per auditorium. And there were, financing plans and stuff. So initially we had Sony projectors and we financed them through Sony. It was similar to a lease to own type situation. But it could have been 10, 15 years to pay those off. And by that time they're outdated. And of course the worst part of that is Sony is also a distributor. So it's like they're forcing you to switch and then saying, we can also sell you the projector. The whole thing was sketchy at best. But I also understand business-wise, from their point of view, the cost of making, transporting, storing 35 millimeter films was extraordinary, whereas with digital, it's just one little hard drive.
Well, for us, it was interesting because I definitely think, in talking with the people from the Magic Company, their last 10 years or so, it became a huge issue for them. And they didn't have the funding to go out and spend $100,000. These projectors were very expensive, especially back then. They've come down in price the last couple of years. So for us, when we got the building, that became one of the first priorities of the new organization was to buy a digital cinema projector. And that was actually one of the first capital equipment purchases that was made. So our group took over the theater in 2014, and that projector was purchased within 6 months of the acquisition of the building. So for us coming in new, we knew it was a priority. We knew that if we were going to show film, that had to be a cornerstone of that. So for us, coming in new, that was a good time to do that, and it's been almost 10 years, and we're gonna have to replace that projector pretty soon. So. I do, and I think, so you go and you binge watch The Mandalorian and maybe one other show. Then eventually you get tired of it, right? You get sick of binge watching things, and maybe you want to venture out and you still want to watch something, but you go to your local movie theater, and so I do think there's room for all of it, and I think people maybe had a little bit of too much of the other during the pandemic, and now they're realizing that it's a good time to come out. It's a good time to go eat at a restaurant and see friends and connect, and these are all these things that remind us that we're all the same, really. We all want the same things out of life. We want to be happy, we want to be loved, we want to feel safe, right? And those are good things that we can provide, is that, people realizing that we're actually a lot more alike than not. And that is I think another ancillary benefit of the movie theater, and people feel good when they feel that way. So we hope to continue all that good stuff.